Let's bring you today's business update now, and we're seeing some pretty dramatic, in fact, drops on stock markets. It's on the back of an unexpected rise in US inflation figures, and our business editor, Charles Pellegrin, is here on set with a lot more. Charles.
That's right, Stuart. We've seen the worst, Wall Street suffered the worst sell-off since the early days of the pandemic in June 2020. And we're seeing a knock-on effect on Asian markets this Wednesday as well. In Japan, as you can see, that the Nikkei is currently down below 2.60%. The Shanghai Composite down under 1%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong down by 2.5%. Kospi in Seoul down close to 1.5% as well. Those inflation figures driving up fears that the U.S. Federal Reserve will increase its rate more aggressively next week. And let's take a look at how Wall Street closed on Tuesday. The Dow Jones fell almost 4%. The S&P 500 down 4.32%. And the Nasdaq down 5.16%. The Nasdaq falling further than other indices because the technology sector is more exposed to higher rates as their value is based on prospects of future growth. Now, let's take a look now at that inflation data that caused this sell-off. U.S. consumer prices increased by 0.1% in August compared to the previous month, when the expectation had been that it would drop by 0.1%. And if you look at the annual inflation rate, as you can see up here, well, in August, it's at 8.3%, so it's down from 8.5% in July and higher than the 8.1% expectation by Wall Street economists. It's worth repeating that this is raising concerns that the Federal Reserve will want to do more to combat inflation, meaning higher rates, and leading to concerns about growth. Well, U.S. President Joe Biden sought to reassure the public when asked for his reaction.
The stock market doesn't necessarily reflect the state of the economy, as you well know. And the economy's still strong, unemployment's low, jobs are up, manufacturing's good. So I think we're going to be fine.
Are you worried about the inflation number, though, sir?
No, I'm not, because we're talking about 0.1%, and anyway, thank you.
Let's take a look at some other stories making headlines in the business world this hour, including a lot of stories about inflation. Amazon says it's planning to raise pay and benefits for its delivery drivers in anticipation of the peak holiday season and amid a tight labor market. The company plans to invest $450 million to fund wage increases and other benefits, including financial support for a 401k savings plan. This is for drivers employed by Amazon's Delivery Service Partners Network, a program that helps people start their own delivery fleets. And the clock is ticking in the U.S. for rail companies and unions to find a settlement before a potential Friday work stoppage. A rail shutdown could freeze almost 30% of U.S. cargo shipments, drive up inflation further, and hinder supply of essential food and fuel. The government says it's making contingency plans and is pressing both sides to reach a deal. And protests against the rise in fuel prices continue in Indonesia, this as the average income is plateauing. In response, President Joko Widodo says he will review the minimum wage, while people started taking to the streets earlier this month when Widodo raised subsidized fuel prices by 30% to keep control of his budget. And Twitter shareholders have voted to approve the $44 billion deal for Elon Musk to buy the company, a deal that the Tesla founder has since tried to come back on, citing concerns about the number of spam accounts on the platform. Well, this followed explosive testimony in Washington from a whistleblower who underlined what he says are Twitter's huge security flaws. Camille Delec has the details.
With Twitter's fate as a publicly traded company still undecided, the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee heard explosive testimony about security practices there. Among the allegations was that Twitter knew it had both Indian and Chinese agents on its payroll. These workers would have had access to sensitive user data.
The FBI notified Twitter of at least one Chinese agent in the country. Company, I should say. Based on allegations, Twitter also suffers from a lack of data security.
Whistleblower Peter Zatko was head of security until he was fired in January. He described a culture that valued profit over security, with leadership habitually ignoring engineers' warnings about hacking and data theft.
What I discovered when I joined Twitter was that this enormously influential company was over a decade behind industry security standards. The company's cybersecurity failures make it vulnerable to exploitation, causing real harm to real people.
Twitter has dismissed Zatko's claims as a false narrative. His allegations could factor into the ongoing legal battle between Twitter and Elon Musk. The billionaire businessman is trying to pull out of a $44 billion takeover, claiming Twitter hid how many spam accounts it had to inflate its purchasing price. His lawyers already plan to use some of the whistleblower's complaints in their argument. Twitter shareholders voted on Tuesday to approve the initial deal. A court will begin hearing the case in October.
Twitter saga continues. Stuart, I'll also be back later in the day to recap and debrief Ursula von der Leyen's speech at the EU, especially her measures to deal with the energy crisis.
Yeah, all that coming up for you in the next hour here on France 24. Thanks so much, Charles Pellegrin, our business editor on France 24.